Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the June 29th edition of Sidereal Insights Astro Update. I'm Phaedra. Thank you all for joining me. Let me get my notes pulled up in front of me, and I want to just make sure that we are indeed live, both on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you're joining me from one platform or the other, thank you. Welcome back to the broadcast. If you're new, I want to invite you to follow Mystick, Physick, Astrology on Facebook or subscribe to the YouTube channel and sign up for notifications whenever we do go live or upload a new broadcast. Thanks so much for joining me. And it looks like we are live in both places. So I'm going to pull up these broadcasts so that I can keep an eye on the comments in case anyone, let me mute my browser here. All right, so I have Facebook pulled up for, hi Danielle, good to see you with us. And let me see here on YouTube, got that muted. We'll see if there's anyone, there's a couple folks who sometimes join us live from YouTube. All right, here we go. Nice. Okay, so good broadcast for you today. We're going to cover a lot of material. Welcome to Sidereal Insights. So what I do on this broadcast every 2 weeks, we kind of explore the astrology of the current planetary transits across the heavens from a Western sidereal perspective. So we're using a Western interpretation, we're using a circular chart, we're using the Fagan-Bradley sidereal zodiac. And so if you need to look up your sidereal sign placements, there is an easy and free online calculator at mystickphysick.com/sidereal tools that you can use. I'm Phaedra. I'm the astrologer and artist of Mystick, Physick, Astrology, and I use Western sidereal astrology in my practice. Really, the idea is to help you reconnect with your soul purpose and remember why it is you came into this world to begin with. I really enjoy helping folks understand what astrological transits they might be coming up with in the future and learning how to kind of adapt to what those transits can bring so you can accommodate them into your life more easily. Basically being responsive to your transits rather than being reactive to them. And so thank you for watching. I want to invite you to like and share the broadcast, tag a friend if you know someone who might be interested in what we're going to be talking about today. And today, that is a recap of retrograde season. We're a ways into that. We have a lot going on with retrograde season and some shifts happening kind of in the current astrological environment. We have a full moon lunar eclipse coming up in Sagittarius, the very last one of the June and July 2020 mid-year eclipse season, and the very last eclipse of the Gemini Sagittarius eclipse series that began in, was it June or July of 2018? Mid-year 2018 kicked off that eclipse cycle, and this upcoming eclipse in July is going to bring it to a close, finally, for those of us who've been wrangling with that one. We're also going to talk about some current and upcoming transits. So thank you for joining me. I'm going to kind of shift my windows around here so that I can keep a closer eye on comment boxes and on the health of the live stream all at the same time. So bear with me while I kind of shift things around so I can see the feeds, see my notes, see the stream. All right, I think we're good to go. Thank you for joining me. Let's have a look at Facebook real quick. I have it all squished up so I can't see your comments. Oh, maybe that's better. Okay. So kind of recap where we're at right now. So a lot of planets retrograde. Some are shifting in and out of retrograde in these weeks, kind of right around where we're at right now. Pluto, the outerest of outer planets at the moment, went retrograde April 25th. We'll talk about that one first because that was the first planet of the mid-year retrograde season to do so. Went retrograde currently in Sagittarius, kind of kicking off. And Pluto, of course, will be retrograde for quite some time. Pluto retrogrades typically last around like 4 or 5 months or so. We had kind of a retrograde week going into mid-May, where the 11th, 13th, and 15th, we had Saturn and then Venus and then Jupiter all station retrograde within a span of days of each other. All of them well, excuse me, let me dial that back a bit. Saturn and Venus stationed retrograde in their own home sign. Saturn in Capricorn and Venus in Taurus. Jupiter stationed retrograde in fall in Capricorn and now has backed up into his home sign of Sagittarius. Now, Venus just went direct on June 25th. She was retrograde for about 40 days or so, and that happens about once every year and a half. So she's gone direct now. We're beginning to see those Venus ruled things start to kind of normalize. However, she won't leave her retrograde shadow until late July. So, don't jump in and rush necessarily when it comes to Venus ruled activities. Give her time to get back up to speed and back up to full strength as much as you can. Typically with non-Mercury retrogrades, we might not feel the shadow quite as intensely, or it's at least drug out long enough that it's kind of a slow ramp up and a slow kind of deceleration going into the retrograde, and then a slower ramp up coming back out of it. She'll be back up to full speed by late July. I want to say the 27th is the day. But what I would say, at least right now, because she just stationed direct, maybe give her at least a couple weeks before you start jumping into Venus ruled activities, especially if you want her to be in a stronger position. Now, she'll be direct in Taurus until early August, at which point she's going to shift into Gemini at the same time that Mercury is shifting out of Gemini into Cancer. Okay. So we have that transition kind of happening right now. We also had on June 23rd, let's back up. So I want to say the 22nd, we had Jupiter make his shift from Capricorn back into Sagittarius. So we're feeling that kind of subtle shift of energies and subtle shift of effects in terms of what house Jupiter's retrograde is showing up in our own charts. And then June 23rd, just the day after that, we had Neptune station retrograde in Aquarius. So Venus direct, but Neptune now retrograde. And we also had, I don't have this here in my notes, we had Mercury recently station retrograde as well. So lots of planets retrograde still. That's what, 5, 6, 1, 2, yeah, Venus shifted. So 5 still. Let's kind of recap Saturn in Capricorn and the planetary placements in terms of what sign they're in, especially where Jupiter just shifted signs. So we've been talking about Saturn in Capricorn since the end of January when he first moved in there. This is a little bit longer term experience for us in terms of a slower moving planetary transit, because he's going to be there until January 2023. So this is like a 3-year transit, including his retrograde. And so we'll feel this one for a while. But what this does is bring up challenges. It brings up limitations in your Capricorn house. And it can make life especially challenging for folks who have Capricorn Sun or Capricorn Rising. Expect to be tested in that area of your life ruled by Capricorn in the coming 3 years. And what Saturn is going to do is he's going to check for weaknesses while he's there. And he's either going to spotlight the weakness and give you an opportunity to fix it, or if you don't take the time and effort to fix it, that underlying structure will break down by the time he leaves Capricorn. So just understand that's how a Saturn transit can play out for us. It's a test. It's an opportunity to fix things. It's an opportunity to learn. And it's where we're going to see obstacles and limitations that we have to learn to work around, work with, deal with in some way while we have a Saturn transit. Jupiter being in Capricorn, keeping in mind he's just backed into Sagittarius, so I don't want to confuse you here. Jupiter's transits of a sign tend to run the course of about a year, not including the retrograde. Sometimes the retrograde, like in this case, can take him back out of a sign. Sometimes it doesn't. It just kind of depends on where he's at in the sign when he goes retrograde. But Jupiter in Capricorn is Jupiter in fall. This is where Jupiter is not necessarily showing his best qualities. It's actually where Jupiter is kind of showing some of his worst qualities in some ways. And so we can be prone to kind of dictatorial tendencies or throwing our weight around, abusing our authority, having kind of a my way or the highway type of attitude with Jupiter and Capricorn. It can lead us to kind of an escalation of commitment, which doesn't necessarily help us, right? Sometimes that can bring about our own fall in some way. It can lead us to be excessively stubborn, right? That can hold us back. That can impinge our own progress. It can also lead us to be a little bit all work and no play in some ways. So Jupiter in Capricorn, we tend to face greater limitations. We tend to have more obstacles to overcome. And we might be tempted to push back against those limitations or test boundaries. It can bring about increasing delays or delaying the inevitable. And you can associate this with the concept of kind of moving goalposts, right? Where you're aiming for a thing and maybe you hit it or come close to hitting it, but suddenly, oh wait, we have this new thing that we need to be aiming for. It can also be an experience of getting our comeuppance, kind of, right? Like the chickens coming home to roost. It can be a frustrating transit having Jupiter move through Capricorn, and it can kind of bring out our tendencies sometimes to be stingy or miserly or lack generosity. Okay, so keep these things in mind. Jupiter stationed retrograde May 15th. So at mid-May, he will be direct come September 12th. His move back into Sagittarius lasts from June 22nd until late November. So being in Sagittarius is a little bit different, right? Because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So he's going to be in his home sign. We'll feel a little bit less or a lessening up of some of the expressions of Jupiter and Capricorn that I just described, and move into a period where we have an opportunity for a second chance at a different outcome for something that we've been working with in our Sagittarius house over, say, the last 6 months to 2 years. Depending on whether for you this cycle is tying in with the last new moon in Sagittarius coming to a fruition now, which would have been 6 months ago, or whether this is related to your own experience of the Jupiter Sagittarius eclipse series. So it could be one or the other in some way. But whatever this circumstance or situation may be in your life, you're at this full moon experiencing an opportunity to bring about a different ending to whatever that is. Okay, so take a look at where your Sagittarius house is in your sidereal natal chart, because from now, with this full moon and until November, I think it's late November, that he moves finally back out of Sagittarius. This is an opportunity for you to kind of approach a new ending and get it right this time. A time for you to make the best of this retrograde and this last full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, because you won't see Jupiter visiting this part of your chart again for another 12 years, right? A whole Jupiter cycle. So this opportunity for a do-over in the part of your life ruled by sidereal Sagittarius is think of it as kind of a freebie on the universe. We don't often get an opportunity for a do-over at the end of an eclipse cycle, but we'll have one this time. So take advantage of it, especially if the condition of your Sagittarius house and the affairs going on in that house, if they are not to your liking, you need to take action now with this eclipse. And this eclipse is in effect, this full moon is in effect because it's an eclipse even already as we're moving into it. Okay. We have Neptune just stationed retrograde, like I mentioned earlier. Neptune retrogrades expose secrets, they expose lies, they expose deceptions, they expose rot and decay, right? And this is made even more impactful by the influence of the eclipses taking place right now, which can also reveal secrets and hidden things. Okay. Now remember that retrogrades are a state of flux, right? And eclipse season is a season of change, of permanent endings and beginnings. Now, things are in motion during these two types of seasons, during these two types of astrological events. Circumstances are shifting right now. So Neptune retrograde at eclipse time means there's a potential for these revealings, these exposures of secrets, lies, deceptions, excuse me, while I bump the microphone, these exposures of rot and decay, or the exposures of hidden information that eclipses can bring. With Neptune retrograde right now, it's a potential for those exposures, those revealings to trigger irrevocable change, especially true even if something does not end or does not begin. And I clarify that because eclipse season generally tends to bring permanent endings or new beginnings. With the rulers of the eclipses being retrograde this eclipse season pretty much all the way through, beginnings and endings may not be permanent. But the changes that are likely to come about, even if something doesn't end, in whatever way it changes because of the things that Neptune can reveal, those changes are likely to be permanent. Okay. However, the final form that life is taking in our Sagittarius house, and even in the other eclipse houses that we've just been through, the final form may not really crystallize for another couple of months, or the beginnings and endings that we see right now may not be permanent in the way that they normally would be during an eclipse season. Okay, so just kind of be aware of that and keep an eye on those houses as you see events transpire and information be revealed. And whatever Neptune has to reveal for you, if he has something to reveal for you, as those things come into your awareness, you'll start to see much more clearly moving forward into the coming weeks and months what that final shape of things will be, what it will look like, especially regarding the Gemini Sagittarius eclipse series, which is coming to a close with this July 5th eclipse, right? So the July 5th eclipse will wind down by early September. And at that time, folks who are affected by the Gemini Sagittarius eclipse series should have a much more clear picture of what life is going to be like and look like going forward in the houses on your Gemini Sagittarius axis. Okay. So if you have any questions about that, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. It's kind of an interesting confluence of astrological events coming together right during this season of flux and change. And so it will affect how these changes play out for us in that way. We also have Venus in Taurus right now. So Venus in Taurus through August 2nd. Of course, she just stationed direct on the 25th. This is an abnormally long transit for Venus, and it's because of her retrograde. Normally, she spends about 3.5 weeks in a sign. We've had her, gosh, in Taurus for seems like ages now, and she'll continue to be there for another, a little over a month or so. She comes out of her retrograde shadow July 28th, is what my notes say here. Okay, Venus is in Taurus. This puts us a little more in tune with our senses, with our desires, with our values. When Venus is in Taurus, we tend to be a little bit more comfort seeking. We're looking for stability. We're engaged in pleasure seeking behaviors. We're looking to make profit in our lives, in our Taurus ruled house, potentially. It makes us tend to appreciate the good things in life, the finer things in life, right? So this is one way that we can feel Venus's transit through Taurus, especially now that she's back to direct motion. Give her another week or so, and then you can optimally more begin Venus ruled activities and have her full support. We also have the Sun entered Gemini June 15th. He'll be there till mid-July, July 16th, before we move into Cancer season. And while the Sun is in Gemini, communication comes into focus for us. The exchange of information and ideas, the exchange of messages and news is more in our focus and more kind of in the spotlight. We have Mercury in Gemini. He moved into Gemini June 5th. So again, retrograde in his home sign. June 5th was also, keep in mind, the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio, the very first one that kicked off this eclipse season. May 25th excuse me. Let me back up my notes. I scrolled too far. Okay, so he will be in Gemini until August 2nd. That's, like I said earlier, the same day that Venus leaves Taurus for Gemini. Mercury, of course, rules Gemini. Moved into his retrograde shadow June 2nd. Will be out of the retrograde shadow. Gosh, did I even look that up? It's in your planner. If you have an ultimate astrological planner, you'll know because it's color-coded in yellow, and Mercury is retrograde and in his retrograde shadow. So he's going to be in his retrograde shadow through almost the end of July. He'll come out of the shadow period the 26th, so just a few days before Venus leaves her shadow period. Whoa, bumping the microphone again. So just kind of be aware of that in terms of Mercury's retrograde. Okay, that's June 18th through July 12th. If you don't have a copy of the Mercury Retrograde Survival Guide, you can download a free excerpt. You can also check out my blog post about the same. I will put links in the video description for you so you can find them. The Mercury Retrograde Survival Guide helps you kind of put together a plan for how to use Mercury's retrograde depending on what house he's retrograde in for you. And then you can also watch my video, 5 Things Not to Do while Mercury is retrograde if you kind of want a little bit of a refresher. But with Mercury retrograde, this is a time to clear the air, especially in Gemini, because Gemini rules communication, right? So this is a time to clear the air. It's a time to really kind of reconcile with someone if you've had a falling out or if you've disengaged in communication with someone and you want to kind of make things right or reestablish communication, you could do that now. Now, if you don't want to, or there's no point to, don't worry about it. But if you do want to, Mercury retrograde is an opportunity to do that. It's also a time for you to watch for new information to come to light right now and to adjust your understanding of a thing. Okay? With Mercury retrograde, typically we have an opportunity to redo things, to review, re-examine, check for accuracy and effectiveness, have a closer look at those details and finer points, tweak as necessary. So this is a time for reworking and revising something that you've already had going on that just really isn't performing the way you expected or being as effective as you wanted. Now is the time to be taking a look at what's not working and where can you make adjustments and changes so that it will work better as you move forward. We also right now have Mars in Pisces, okay? Mars just moved into Pisces. So this is June 19th through August 18th, this transit, before he's back home to his own sign of Aries. So this is a time for rest, retreat, recuperation, relaxation, active self-care, spiritual practices, meditation, spiritual journeys and explorations, moving into new territory in terms of your spiritual life. It's a time for solo projects and solo activities when you can make progress on those things, okay? Also coming up, we have retrograde Mercury conjoining the Sun tomorrow. I called this out in the last broadcast, but what I also want to call your attention to this time around, and I should have mentioned it, I feel like last time around as well. So the same day, June 30th, we also have Jupiter, retrograde Jupiter, conjoining retrograde Pluto. So this kind of dynamic that we have going on also activates Uranus. So there's a potential in these days right around June 30th for surprise news related to an ongoing situation or condition. And this news could change things for you, especially with the July 5th full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius being active. Jupiter-Pluto conjunction is taking place in Sagittarius, okay? This, like I said earlier, is the last mid-year season eclipse and the last one in this cycle, but it is active right now and active through July 12th, which is when Mercury stations direct, okay? And then it's going to be active again at the full moons in August, or near the full moons in August and September. And while it's active, this is, like I mentioned earlier, opportunity for a second chance, for a different outcome in your Sagittarius house, undoing or redoing a prior outcome. So if you settled on a course of action and it's not turned out the way that you ultimately wanted for your Sagittarius house, This is your opportunity really to go back to that outcome, make whatever changes you need to make so that moving forward, because it's the end of a Jupiter cycle in your Sagittarius house, you're setting yourself up for what you really do want, rather than 12 more years of potentially not being happy with what's going on in that house before you get another chance at Jupiter's transit in his own rulership, right? This can be an impulsive full moon. It could bring about headstrong behavior. Passions could run high at this full moon, and it could trigger sudden reversals or unexpected changes of direction. There's kind of a rebellious and revolutionary flavor to this full moon. They're like big new ideas, big idealism, or really kind of almost extreme idealism. You can expect widespread change, transformation, or destruction as a result of this particular full moon lunar eclipse. And it may also reveal or involve in some way corruption. This full moon, it is a chance for a do-over. It's potentially very destructive. Okay, Jupiter is weakened. He's retrograde, right? And he's conjunct Pluto, which is the sign of, the planet of destruction, right? Destruction and rebirth. Okay, regeneration, right? What happens when a scorpion loses its tail? It grows back, right? So big change, but it would be potentially destructive change in that way, but also transformative change, which can be a good thing. As I said in the June and July 2020 eclipse season video, this is, if there was a keyword for this particular eclipse, you could say it's big. That would be my keyword here. Okay. You could say that really about anything involving Jupiter to that degree. But the key word when I look at the chart here that really stands out is it's big. Also coming up just after, about 4 days after that, we have Mercury, retrograde Mercury, squaring Mars on July 9th. Now, Mercury's retrograde, right? So what this could be is renewed conflict, like an old argument that you thought had been hashed out and settled could rear its ugly head again. Or a previous act of deception could be revealed, which then triggers a conflict. Okay, so watch for some sort of dynamic like that to play out, especially if you're going to be personally affected by that square. A lot has to do with Mercury or Mars in your own natal chart and what you have going on at that degree, which, do I have that handy so we can see what degree you would want to be looking at with Mercury and Mars? I don't have it super handy, but 21 degrees of Gemini is where Mercury will be when he squares Mars. And so Mars will be at 21 degrees of Pisces. Okay. So check your chart, Gemini and Pisces, or the opposite signs, Sagittarius and Virgo, for a personal planet or a point at 21 degrees to see if that square is going to spark off something significant for you. Okay. And then just a few days after that, on July 12th, we're going to have Mercury station direct, thankfully. Looking ahead, of course, we're going to have an interesting day on the 14th. We'll talk about this in the next broadcast. Sun and retrograde Jupiter opposing each other on July 14th. And then Cancer season beginning on July 16th. But we'll talk about all that and more on the next Sidereal Insights Astro update coming up Monday, July 13th, tentatively at 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A few announcements. If you haven't yet, you may want to watch my latest eclipse season video, the June and July eclipse season critical dates and degrees to know. I will include a link to that in the video description. In that video, I've covered this kind of mid-year eclipse season, specifically looking at how to know whether or not you are personally affected by any of those three eclipses, whether that effect is going to be challenging or easier for you to accommodate into your life, and what dates you'll want to keep an eye on, not only during eclipse season itself, but also going into the coming 12 years, because 12 months, because eclipses do have an effect for up to 12 months after when they happen. But you'll want to watch that. Specifically, you could watch the beginning for a bit of a recap on eclipse cycles themselves, and then you could skip forward to the July 5th eclipse if you just want a quick update on this last one in the cycle. And I'll include, like I said, a link for that. If you want a more in-depth refresher on eclipses themselves, not specifically about this eclipse season, you'll want to catch my video, 3 Important Eclipse Essentials That You Need to Know. And I would invite you to please follow Mystick Physick on Facebook. Be sure to like and share this broadcast, or tag a friend if you know someone who can benefit about what we're benefit from, what we're talking about here today. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on that notification bell, and then you'll get notified every time I go live or upload a new video. And I want to invite you, because 'tis the season, to sign up to get notified when the 2021 Ultimate Astrological Planner becomes available for pre-order, which is going to be very, very soon. That is in process. I'll include a link for you to sign up for getting notified when that pre-sale kicks in. And thank you so much for watching the broadcast today. We will take a look at whether or not we have any comments here. You can hear and see me, Danielle. Awesome. Good. Oh, wait a minute. Kate is on. All right. I just want to make a quick review of the comments. Oh, hi. On YouTube. Got a watcher. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again in about 2 weeks for the next broadcast, and then we'll see you again coming up in just a few days for the full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius guided releasing practice. Now that will for sure be live on YouTube, and hopefully I'll figure out a way to broadcast it live in the Sidereal Insights Facebook group on the Facebook platform. If you're not a member of the Sidereal Insights astrology community, join there, and you can participate live from Facebook as well as YouTube. And we'll go over this full moon, and we'll have a look at what it is we need to kind of release and let go of to make space in our Sagittarius house for the new moon in 6 months, for something new to come in. All right. Thanks everyone for joining me, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.